Hello, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and any other feasible social media channel. It's me and Emily again, back for another episode of Freeformers Unplugged, live streaming 1 p.m. UK time on a Friday, and on podcast on wherever you might get your podcasts. It's warm today, Emily. How are you?
Yeah, quite warm. What's up with this? It was like freezing. I had my winter coat on Monday, and now it's Friday, and I'm like, yeah, melting. Having just sat outside for a school picnic for an hour with no shade, quite warm.
Did you lotion up?
Yeah, of course,
Good, because it is very sunny out there. And let's be honest, we have both got fair British skin, which will burn like a beetroot. That's not. It will look like a beetroot. I don't know whether beetroots necessarily burn in the sun. Anyway, expect more tangents about what beetroots do in various weather conditions as this episode goes on. But to task, the title of this week's live stream is AI in HR and Learning and Development. Stop automating, start transforming. Very blunt title today. When I was thinking about this title about 5 minutes ago, it was the automating part that I wanted to focus on first. So, by your definition and everything you've done in your work today, what's automation? What does automation in HR and L&D currently look like, do you think?
Well, I mean, to strip it back, automation is when you're getting a machine to do a task without necessarily any input from you. You just press the go button or start the trigger, whatever that looks like, it does the thing. And pretty much it tells you when it's finished. Obviously, you can put breakpoints in there to join up different parts of automation flows, which obviously gets very relevant when we start talking about AI in particular. So automation doesn't have to be AI. I think that's the thing that we kind of like forget quite a lot. There's a lot of automation that's just to do with running scripts or all sorts of different types of engineering things. For example, my husband helped me run an automation which was getting all of the words out of PowerPoints and creating PowerPoints, creating text files in the folders, because I had like 70 PowerPoints to review, and I thought, I can't review this and I can't upload them to AI because it will cry. So within that's just an automation. Like, it's just making a text file. There's no AI involved with that, no artificial intelligence, no machine learning, no large language model. So I think that like we get a little bit confused with all of the words a lot of the time. And then I also think, what does automation look like in L&D and HR? Very different across different parts of the organization. No, different organizations, I mean. So there are some that are really far ahead. I don't know if you've ever like looked at what Zapier do with their HR, and I can't remember her. I'll look her up while you're talking. She is amazing. She's also called Emily, and she is just amazing. And she posts all about all of the automation and workflows and things that they're working through in the HR space. She's an incredible person to follow. Whereas you then go to people who still really doing everything by spreadsheets, and then you've got everything absolutely, and like, no shade on a spreadsheet. I love a spreadsheet, but it's not always fit for purpose, particularly when it's not even managed particularly well. So I think it really depends. There's a whole lot of opportunities. It's really exciting, and there's a whole lot of ways that we could mess this up.
Well, so coincidentally, I was trying to ask a leading question because Zapier was the thing I had in my head when I asked you that question. Not because of what they're doing, but just even what Zapier is. So, I mean, how would you describe what Zapier? Do you say Zapier or Zapier?
Well, I say Zapier because I think it's Zapier.
Okay,
Her name's Emily Maybe. She's a senior AI automation engineer for HR. I'm just going to say, like, I've been following her for ages, and she posts awesome content, and she's really cool.
Okay,
so not that she knows who I am, so this is a bit awkward now. Like, tag her in this afterwards.
What? Yeah, what is Zapier?
Zapier is this and that. They're the same, or IFTT. Yeah, that's the right amount of things. That's they're basically, you set up like zaps, little tasks. So if this thing happens, like I said at the top, if this trigger happens, then this action happens. And you can have all sorts of integration. And the joy of Zapier, and if this and that, there probably are others as well, is they've already sorted out all your endpoints, meaning that your different tech products or services will speak to each other. So for example, you can link Google Calendar to Slack really easily. I mean, you can do that in a native integration. You don't need to use Zapier or if this and that, but it basically says, if I get, you can set up anything you like. So if I get an email, send me a Slack notification, things like that. That's an automation. There's absolutely no I involved in that at all. I think the thing with using these type of products, which is the same, I think, as when you want to replace different parts of our workflow with AI, is you've got to really have a clear understanding about what it is that you're trying to do. And if you understand the workflow and you understand where the data sits, how to connect, even if you don't understand how to connect the bits together, understanding how data is transferred across, even at a high level, then you can start to begin the automation process. And if you can't, or if data is in an absolute mess of a place like data I was dealing with this morning, I spent the whole morning managing data, then automation fails, but also then AI also can't pick up the pieces because AI also needs really nice, clean, structured data to be very effective.
I think the thing that I was thinking about is Zapier and if this then that was something we were probably training people on 10
Oh,
years
certainly.
ago.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't see a lot of that kind of logic happening in most organizations. Which is like, it's been around for ages. Automation
Mm.
at a very good working level has been around for ages. And if this, then that, and Zapier, very good at, you know, if you want to automate your home life to some extent, really easy. Because even if you don't know what the art of the possible is, both of those platforms kind of give you the option like, oh, would you like to try and make this happen? And then you click a button, you connect the two platforms. It's like, cool, well, now I can make, if this happens, I can make this happen type thing.
So give us an example of how you've used it in your personal life or work
Oh,
life.
if someone arrives home, turn light bulbs on. So that is using my Nest camera notifications to then go to my lights. Now it just so happens that actually Google now have that kind of functionality baked in because they bought Nest. But back in the day when I was first using it, it was if I get an email from X, do this, you know, put it here or turn or file it somewhere, you know, just moving stuff around. Most of it was about smart home automation. And then what I did is I set up a load of NFC tags around my house. So when I put my phone in particular places, it would perform a different function. So
Okay.
if I put my phone, well, it used to be that if I used to put my phone on my desk, office lights would come on, music would start playing. And so if you scan this, if you do this, like I look,
That would frustrate me so much.
well, then don't put your phone on the sticker.
Oh, it's not just anywhere on it. It's on a very
No.
specific
So
location.
yeah,
Okay,
I got a
gotcha.
little. I must have some somewhere, but the little programmable NFC stickers that are about that
Yeah,
big.
no, I
You
get
have
it.
to put it there. But it's easy to do that at home because you have access to the
Mm.
complete tech ecosystem. What you don't have in necessarily in a larger organization is access to that whole tech ecosystem. It makes it's a lot more difficult to plug A into B. In a startup, really easy. You know, in the startups that we've worked at and with, that's really easy because you're like, can I get access to this? Yes, of course you can. Here you go. And then you've plugged A into B. Where within a large organization, not only is the technology ecosystem much larger, you know, in both terms of spread and number of platforms, the ownership is quite disparate as well, even though you could argue it should all be under the IT team. But they're too busy resetting people's passwords to do some of this stuff sometimes. And so you end up in this world where even though that kind of level of automation has been around for a while, I don't think it's had this widespread adoption yet because it's always been too difficult.
So I think you're right. It's too difficult. I don't think it's just necessarily an access thing. I think it's also, like I said at the top, you've got to be able to really think about what it is that you're trying to achieve, and that's a little bit of a barrier to entry to some people because you've got to take the time and you've got to figure out how to use the platform. I'd say they're fairly obvious, but if you're not like really clued on and you don't have the time, you know, you're fighting 15 fires at once, like, hello, we're talking about HR here, right? You're doing all that stuff at once. You haven't got the time to figure out something that might just be easier to do yourself. And on the access thing, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very frustrating, but it is there for a reason. And I think, especially now, we've got people just like vibe coding stuff, plugging in all sorts of agents to all sorts of systems. Like, actually those organizations that aren't locked down, they're the ones who are at risk of a massive data breach or some sort of issue because people haven't been following policies because they just want to make their lives easier, which I completely get. But then people build things or people do things with no understanding of like basic cybersecurity or basic data, like data management, all those sorts of things. So I don't know, it kind of worries me sometimes. I know it worries Pete, my husband. He's a principal software engineer, and he just says this is his thing. He's like, why does nobody understand any basics of cybersecurity? No, you cannot put personally. I mean, this is a different thing. Data, personal data. No, you cannot put personal identifiable information of all our customers into an LLM. Absolutely not. That is 100% illegal. And all of these like kind of things. And people don't. They're just trying to. And I think AI pushes us to be faster and faster and faster, and it doesn't have the brakes in the same way that automation does because it's so much easier to use. There's a lower barrier to entry. I think it's a blessing, but I also think it's a curse.
There's an interesting comment from Ronith in chat. Most companies, there's a it's a lot part of a longer comment, but I just want to focus in on probably the last statement. Most companies automate the visible stuff first and leave the actual friction untouched, which I think
Oh
is
yeah.
really interesting, right? Because uh, you don't know what you don't know, and most organizations aren't necessarily designed to seek out the friction. They're designed to maintain the status quo, and I think that's a lot of the stuff we've talked about in HR and L&D previously. Is regardless of what the rest of an organization is doing, those two departments specifically do focus on the optimization of how we currently do stuff rather than reinventing. And you only reinvent if where the actual friction is, and if you're unaware of where the actual friction is, then what are you designing for? Um, so AI has kind of prompted this proliferation of pseudo automation, I guess, rather than genuine automation, because you cut through the noise, and regardless if you're a thought leader in AI or not, there are a lot of organizations and people in those organizations who are still using it for just very basic stuff. Not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying it's like the entry level stuff of rewriting an email or summarizing a document
Mm.
or looking at actions from meetings and stuff like that. Like all of this stuff is great. Would the thing that puzzles me though is like I wouldn't really call any of that automation.
Well, no, it's not. That's
Well,
not automation.
but this is where the title of the thing, because I think the lines are being blurred too much between those two things. Like I don't see I see a lot of people using AI and automation like almost interchangeably,
Yeah.
which doesn't really make sense because automation isn't necessarily, like I say, automation's been around a while. Wouldn't say it's an AI specific process, but AI can amplify it or expedite it, as you said. So does well, let's answer two questions. Does automation equal transformation?
Clearly not. That's my answer. Your turn.
I would also say no. So the criticism I would leverage at anyone saying bringing AI and automation to a conversation is automation is about optimizing what already exists. So you can, by its very definition, you can't really transform unless you like. These seem two different things. My head can't get past that.
So automation is doing repetitive tasks following rules like over and over and over again. It has the same outcome each time, right? Or reliable outcome within the same parameters each time, although the if the input varies, then maybe the output will vary. Whereas AI, it's using a large language model, and it's to make patterns. I mean, I suppose we could say apply reasoning, but it doesn't really apply reasoning. It just kind of like pattern matches, right? Very, very, very well, and uses lots of probability and maths to work out what the next things are. So I think they are completely different. I actually don't think it's very helpful to think about them in the same way at all. But in answer to your question, does AI make transformation? Well, no, sorry, not AI. Automation equal transformation. It depends on how you apply it, same as anything. Because if you're just automating like your light bulbs to come on when you put your phone on a desk, right? That's just speeding up the task that's very clearly defined.
I'm not changing what I'm doing. I'm still playing music and turning lights on. That's not transformative.
Exactly.
That's yeah.
But if we look at it on a much bigger scale, then the things can be transformative because of the output. So for example, I'm thinking like travel, and I'm thinking like all sorts of machinery here, right, that runs automatically and is therefore able to transform businesses, because you're not making things by hands. You've had factories, industrial revolution, all of those kind of things. So but that's because of the nature of the difference. Like they're just different scales that we're talking about. So I would say it's not necessarily, don't interrupt me. I say it's not necessarily, it depends how you apply it.
Well, so automation creates the space for transformation, but isn't transformation itself?
I suppose so. Yes, but I think it's where, yes, but the biggest thing is the mindset of the person, people, organization who is applying and what they are applying it to. You think big and you go really big, it could be transformative, I think, but most of us don't have the space, the freedom, the time to think that big.
Well, and this is one of the issues. One of the stories I bring up quite frequently is that a HR team of 7 people brought in a platform that automated a lot of the kind of conversations, the documentation around HR conversations, essentially, enabling managers to do that. That platform is a great platform, but essentially the organization then offboarded the team of 7 HR people, because it's like, well, now that this is happening over here, what do you do? And so therefore that was just, it wasn't necessarily even automation at that level. There was a level of automation, but there's also a level of empowering someone else to do that work, which was, it wasn't necessarily new. None of the conversations were new. The conversations were moved and being automated. The process of supporting someone to have those conversations was done by a platform rather than a person. And so you're left in that space where those 7 people in that HR team are like, well, what now? And who answers that question? Is the business going to answer that question? Probably not. Are the HR people going to answer that question? You'd hope so. But in this instance, obviously weren't able to do that enough, because otherwise they'd have stayed within the organization. And so if you go through this rapid automated power transformation, then you've got to think of what's next, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the space for the transformation, right? And so, yeah, that's, I guess, what you were saying before. It gives you the space for it because you've now got the time and the space, maybe not the freedom, that bit's TBD, I guess,
Yeah.
to then do something that is truly transformative, to transform your function. Because otherwise, if you're not demonstrating your value and your job can be taken by an automated machine, then you are going to lose your job. And so many different jobs have been made redundant in the past. So many skills have been lost because now we have machines and automated things that do it for us. But we then have the time to do other things, and we've made new roles. And so that's what I think.
And that'll just keep happening, regardless if it's because of automation or AI. That will always be a constant, in the world of work evolves and certain roles get made redundant. And you can do one or two things. You can sit there and complain about it, or figure out what comes next. I think Guy Fernando was talked about this a lot. Like, no one has the obligation to tell you what the future of your role is going to be. In fact, you're probably the best person to be informed that, because you have that experience, that knowledge set. But by and large, let's focus on HR. Is the CIPD or an equivalent body thinking of what you do with the space that's left once this automation and transformation has happened? Probably not. Are any individuals thinking about it? Some are, but have they applied it? Maybe, maybe not. And has it reached scale? Definitely not. And so there is this onus on the individual to start thinking about that. Now, fortunately, you have a thought partner in AI that could potentially help you do that, but that's a whole different conversation. So let's imagine we've automated everything we can possibly do under the current sphere of the technological landscape.
Okay.
Have we done that?
Us?
Yeah, we haven't automated everything we could.
Absolutely not.
But we're trying. Are we? Yeah.
Not necessarily, not for everything. For some things, yes. For some things, no. There's a couple of barriers that get in the way. One is understanding the workflow, right? bloody zero. Like, I'm definitely not using it to the best of it, all of its features and all of the automated things I could do. So zero, other platforms are available, QuickBooks, what have you, finance software. Because and that is a heavily manual thing that we do, or that, and I know it is, and it's kind of on my list, but it's complicated, it's hard, and I don't think it's going to free up that much time or be that beneficial for us to invest the time in. Plus, it's quite sensitive data, obviously, it's all like our financials. I wouldn't want to connect it up to anything else, and then you're limited by the platform and by your own knowledge. And again, it's about headspace and time to explore all that. So there's an element of that. There are some things that I haven't automated that I could automate, that it comes down to it's not worth it for the costs involved of having to have like licenses for different things. So I mean, there are various things that we could do with Zapier that we don't, and then there are some things that we're limited, like we said at the top, by other people, other organizations. So personal use case, I tried to do this and then gave up because it was impossible. I've got 3 different calendars, and they all need to reflect when I'm not available, so that nobody books things in the different calendars, right? And then I have 4 if you include my personal one as well. But I was looking at the different options out there, but one of our clients is so heavily locked down and heavily restricted that I can't use any sort of software that will mean any data leaves that organization, including my calendar invites, including, it's impossible. So do you know what I do? I just literally have a busy button, and then I just invite my 2 different emails and all of that. And it's a nightmare, but it doesn't take that long. But I did look into it, but I wasn't allowed to do it because of the barriers around.
So it feels like there's a little bit of like an analytical framework that you're using that I'm not aware of, in that there is cost. So
Yeah.
there's the cost element. There's the opportunity element. Could you do it, or is there something? So in everything you said, potentially you could do it, but actually the opportunity is being restricted by something, and that and then there's the domain expertise and knowledge you have in an area. So with the finance one, actually, because you aren't an accountant and I'm not accountant, and we're not zero experts either, to do that, for us to do that would probably take a lot of time. So you need someone who's an expert in finance, and then also finance automation and AI as well, who could do that far quicker and probably and therefore for cheaper as well. So if it doesn't meet any of those, if it doesn't fit in that Venn diagram somewhere, then it's kind of prohibitive to do it. So whereas an organization maybe with 50 people would probably have a specific finance person, they will have automated zero at some point.
Yeah.
To that point.
Or they might have. I think I do a session for Sam Eaton's Mindability Mastermind. I do a session on like automating business flows, or like it's not really about automating it. It's about looking at it and working out how your data and how your systems all connect together, and to see if it's suitable for you now, and to see if it's suitable for you in the future. And with her community, they're mostly very small, one person, sometimes more HR businesses, HR consultants. And so some of them have nothing at all, and some of them have quite elaborate systems set up. And we do like this mapping exercise where you kind of map out, based on your business functions, all the things you have, how your data flows, how they're connected. And so that's how I know exactly the opportunities that we have, because I've done that for us multiple times. And I know like our kind of finance area is one. I also know, outing you here, our CRM system is an absolute mess and a half, because I know that you don't want to use one. So I'm absolutely not going to put one in place that you're not going to use and keep updated. So there are all sorts of integrations that we could be using, but we're not. So I also think maybe that's opportunity, but I think it's also a little bit of motivation as well.
Well, I think I'm my school of logic with the CRM, just to defend myself slightly, is that I don't think there is. I don't think, but again, this is experience bias. That I tried to do it 3 years ago, and no platform, no platform that I could find could do it in the way I wanted, or even if it could, it was at such an astronomical cost that I was like, this doesn't even make sense to do that. Even though actually, I think if you worked out the time I was spending, I would have spent doing it, but I wasn't doing it anyway. So anyway, like all of that data, is being generated somewhere, and it should all just feed into one thing, and it should be able to understand it. Easier said than done in this very specific case, because with the CRM, right, I needed to pull from WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, the website, my emails, my calendar, and it needs to be able to understand the different, when meetings have happened, what conversations were had, so the transcript of those meetings. Like at any single point, all of the data you need to sense make a relationship with an individual, we have it. Some of that, granted, is in the old noggin here, which is Toby's get out clause for absolutely everything. However, most of that stuff we could do. And, if someone said, oh, actually, I'm missing this bit of data, I would give it to it. But at the moment, anyway, again, that I suppose we all have this kind of this evaluative effort to kind of reasonably think, do we do it? But to revisit that logic time and time again, you're probably not going to do, right? So the last time I meaningfully tried to fix that problem was 3 years ago. Now a lot has changed in 3 years.
I mean, I've tried to fix it twice
and
not found a solution because I know it's a big gap for us. And so I think this is where we come back to, can automation and AI, can they be transformative? You've got to understand the flows, like I said before, and then you've got to have all that motivation. You've got to have the space, the time to do it all. I've looked at it, and then there has to be the capability. And in this case, the capability, I don't think is there yet. I mean, this is where we get bombarded with people being like, oh, I use this, I use this, I use this. It could work. I feel we've come a long way off HR, though.
We have, but I think really, I mean, the title is called Stop Automating, Start Transforming. So I think we really have to do this deep dive on automation to understand that we really haven't talked about artificial intelligence in terms of a large language model sense at all. And so, there is a long conversation to be had about automation. But if we then do go into AI, let's not. How is AI enabling transform? Here's the question. Automation is creating the space for transformation. Let's just say that, whether it's binary like that, but let's assume it is. Therefore, you now have the opportunity to redesign how, not how you do stuff, but what you're doing. Is AI doing that at the moment for your money?
In some places, absolutely. In other places, not. It's very interesting. There was the L&D, so Learning and Development Shakers group, very active online, lots of community, lots of meetups, have a Slack group. Then the AI channel, they're like putting in like kind of looking for case studies of people who have used AI to really transform, and they're very clear there has to be a benefit beyond just speeding up because that's not transformative, I suppose. It's hard because speeding up to the extent that we can speed up gives you so much time to do other things, but there does have to be that kind of step beyond. How can you reimagine and redesign whatever it is that you're doing? I think some people are taking those steps, but I think the vast majority of people are not using AI in a hugely transformative sense, although it may feel very transformative because their role has completely transformed.
I'm getting a plethora of Synthesia adverts at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, just so much. But their marketing campaign is like, you need a training video and you need it cheap and quickly, use Synthesia. And you're like, okay, so you can create the product quicker. I would argue quite a lot that the product is substandard as a result. And they're talking about these avatar-driven ones. So there's some elements of Synthesia which are really good, but the create an avatar and get them to read your words is like,
oh, it's creepy. I've done it before. And then we just use the voice, not the image. But it was very funny. It gave me a sort of a Australian British accent. Very odd.
Yeah. But it doesn't look like a person's talking. It doesn't sound like a person's talking to you. And what we know from user-generated content and video content online, that lots of people like watching content. If they're being talked to, they like to, have eye contact, have left cheek bias, have this interaction with another human. Otherwise, on YouTube, there'd be loads of Synthesia videos, and people going, "Oh, okay, well, we're all happy with this AI slot."
But there are so just push back a second. There are like not necessarily the avatar, but there are loads of those like AI voice monotonous, like awful things that like our generation can't stand. But like the younger Gen Z and below, Gen Alpha, allegedly, I'm not one of them, but allegedly don't seem to have a problem with in the same way. I was listening to a podcast about this, it was ages ago, it's probably about a year ago now, so I can't remember all the details. And I think it comes down to what you're used to. We're used to natural content, so we like natural content. Services and software that are built for visually impaired people, they also use kind of that computer voice because it goes faster, and then you get used to it, and then it's a preference because it's a habitual thing. It's what you're used to. So I don't know if you've ever used any of them. As a person who's not used to them, they're really hard to follow. But if you're used to it, you understand it. So I don't think this takes away from what you were saying, because I think most people in the workplace don't like synthesia videos and avatars. And I know there's a big kickback against an awful lot of AI use. I know there's a big kickback against AI use in marketing and things, with younger people particularly boycotting brands that use AI creative marketing. But I don't think necessarily that the voice is as clear cut as you suggested.
That's interesting. Put a pin in that for our event next year that we're planning, to bring that as a, let's get 3 people on stage and talk about content preferences across multiple generations, or maybe even just one generation. You know, the Gen Z audience, which, you know, when you go to a conference, there's not a massive amount of people from Gen Z contributing to the conversation. It's all people who are
Let's talk
30
about them.
plus. Yeah. Let's talk about them, not introduce them into the conversation, which seems a bit baffling to me, but that's why we're doing the event anyway. So in that instance, and the video creation, that's not transformative. You're still making videos, and for my money, you're making videos quicker and cheaper, but you're making worse videos. Let's just, again, making some broad assumptions there. So that's definitely not transformative. Or is it? You're saving money and time. Is saving money and time pegged as transformed?
Okay.
I suppose we're getting lost in the semantics of transformation, but transformation, me, was be like doing something different to what you were doing before.
Well, you're doing it different. You're doing it
You are doing
differently,
it different.
certainly. And you are doing different things. Your role has changed, it has tweaked, but it's not big, and I don't think it's going to necessarily have the impact that we're hoping for. I think transformation is a hugely loaded term socially, and I think that's what's missing, the big difference of impact. Sure, you could do things faster, but like if you can come up with 100 bad things instead of 3 mediocre things, you know, that's not transformative because it's not necessarily having the impact. I think it comes back to the thing I always say, like, what are you trying to achieve?
Do we have the ability in the world of work to be transformative? That's a really big, like, if I look at things like hacking HR as a thought leadership channel, how much hacking is really going on there? Not a lot. Disrupt HR. In some of the disrupt HR events, how much disruption is really happening there? Not too much. And so we end up with these kind of, and then you use the word transformative. You know, I think ever since things changed, started getting a bit quicker, everyone would peg the latest generation of technology coming into work as a transformative moment for culture and society and all this kind of stuff. Are we, is transformation, disruption, and hacking, for want of a better term, are they actually just more unachievable aspirational words rather than the ones that actually happen when you get boots on the ground?
I mean, you haven't clearly defined any of them, so therefore it's impossible to say, like, objectively. The internet transformed society, right?
Yeah.
100% transformed society. I think AI
Has
is
it? So it transformed society. Do you think it has transformed society outside the world of work quicker than it has inside the world of work?
I mean, I can guess, I can blab on, but 100%, I don't know because I don't
Okay.
remember it before. I'm not really old enough.
All right, show off. Go on. Sorry. Continue your previous point.
No, I was just gonna say I don't really remember, but I think so. I don't know which one came first, but I do know that there's a lot more. Everything has changed now. Like I would say social media has transformed because it's having long lasting and long reaching impacts into things. So I think I do think AI will transform society. And so therefore I think it will transform. It has the power to, but I think a lot of people aren't using it to full potential. It's a bit of a cop out answer, but sorry, it's a bit of a rubbish question.
It's a good, because if you even just go back to one of the previous points you made about like different habits in terms of content consumption, that listening to an AI generated voiceover is actually like becomes normal. You know, that is a completely different it's a markedly different way of creating consuming content, because you're taking a human out of the recording and edit, no, not necessarily the editing process, but the recording process. I don't. It will transform. So the last one was the internet. Then the next one is AI. Was there nothing in between? Would you say that was
social media?
Social media, but would you call that as a byproduct of the internet, or are you going to disdain it?
Everything's a byproduct of humankind, isn't it? So it depends where you want to draw your lines. But I think social media is. No, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm going to be all pedantic.
It's fine.
If you're asking me questions that I don't have clear definitions of, I'm going to default to I don't know. I would probably say it is, but I'll caveat with I haven't really thought about it. I would say social media is its own thing.
I think that's fair. So one of the things you talked about, let's get into like the. Oh, hang on, we've got another comment. Sushant says, without reevaluating core processes, which is what you said, AI merely scales existing inefficiencies. True transformation optimizes foundations for augmented human output. AI merely scales existing inefficiencies. I think that's kind of the same. That's the assumption that what you're currently doing is the best thing. And that's the problem with most. The framework of work is that you are literally reimbursed for doing the same thing. That's, here's your job description. This is what we need you to do. No job description is like, oh, we need you to rewrite your job description every year. Now, that's a good idea. Everyone has to rewrite your own job. Not that you necessarily implement it, but if you were to rewrite your job description, how would you rewrite it? Like, there's got to be that agility in what you do. And like we said, the best person to probably think about that is the individual and have a conversation about it. Anyway, that aside, one of the really interesting pieces of work we've done this week is we've just made a very, very different file format to what we've ever done before. And it's blown my mind, because I was like, this is so much easier and better to understand, but it sits at odds with everything I've probably ever done before in terms of creating some stuff. So do you want to explain what it is? Because I think you'll explain it way better than I will.
Sure. So we're working with a client looking at their HR data strategy in terms of what kind of metrics should they be collecting, what is their strategy, how do we go about putting it together, because they're very technical, they've got lots of data in great places but not a lot of understanding about HR. And so they wanted us to write, well, what does HR team of the future look like? But we don't want it in a deck, we don't want it in a report, we just want it in a markdown file. Because all they're going to do, not all, they're going to feed it into their LLM, they're going to feed it into their tool of choice and use it as a source file in understanding and shaping a knowledge file, a context file for starting to do the work that they're doing. And do you know what? I think it's amazing. I think it's brilliant, because I hate PowerPoint with an absolute I hate it. I hate it so much. It doesn't help I'm not a visual person. And so I always spend ages faffing and worrying. They're also not very accessible. I think I said earlier that I've been working on managing data from scripts out of PowerPoints because I have so many to deal with. And of course, and then I have to tidy them up using AI because of the quantity and the stupid time frame I've got, but because they are a mess, because they've not been structured properly, because very few people structure them properly. So PowerPoints aren't even very accessible. So an awful lot of people for an awful lot of reasons, right? So yeah, it's amazing. I was like, why? Yeah, let's write everything in Markdown. Brilliant.
Wait, you've just made me think of something. I was reviewing I got ChatGPT to just review a proposal I'd written in a deck last week.
Mm-hmm.
And it reviewed it and it couldn't read the file properly. Everything was out of order, because obviously when you build a PowerPoint file, every box, in the same as Markdown, right, is kind of placed, it should be placed with intent, that this goes here and this goes underneath, this goes here and this goes underneath it. But obviously what I'd done is box 1, box 2, it went box 1,
7, box
2,
19.
And it was all over the place. So I can't read this.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it solves for that issue as well. But even so, that's from more of a functional perspective in allowing an AI tool to be able to understand the content you're providing it. But then the whole wording and narrative of it changed, because
Mm.
usually when we're asked to do this piece of work, right, it's about a narrative, some storytelling, taking people on a journey about what these concepts are and why you might use them. With this client, it's like, no, we don't want that. Tell us what it is. And so we like the reference points I used when I was building it was like it's either a instruction manual or a wiki with a kind of things. It needs
Mm.
to provide that kind of function, and it still does the storytelling, but it's doing it in a functional way for AI to understand it, not another human. But also, it's quite readable from a human perspective. It's not like it's in completely different language or
Yeah, you're
anything
not
like
written
that.
in binary or anything.
No, no, not yet. We're not subservient to the machines that much yet. But well, you could argue, did I write it in binary? Because each letter, anyway, it doesn't matter. Again, where do you draw the line of where you're writing binary or not? It was such an interesting way of writing it, and I really enjoyed it as well. I think that
Mhm.
was the thing that surprised me. That I was like, oh, this is going to be quite reductive and not useful. And I was like, actually, it's made me think more critically about the work, because I have to the thing that needs to understand this isn't someone who's going to knock on my door, ring me up, and ask me a question about it. The thing that's going to understand this will ask. I'll not have an opportunity to interact with it because it'll be used as a tool inside that organization. Now they might get some feedback and stuff, but and so it has to cover everything. It has to cover the whole context of what it needs to. And even now I say that out loud, I'm like, oh, maybe we should have added X or Y in as a result. But it also
I've not
has to
actually sent it yet, so you still can.
it's fine, you can send it. But also like so it has to have, you know, the whole context of what it needs. But then there's also the element of, does it just make sense? And if you do some of the pink and fluffy type proposals that I've done in the past that are about storytelling and as you call it, right, the jazz hands and getting people involved, there's none of that in that document.
There's no substance, and that's the thing with consultants. And we work with consultancies, right? More than one. And I was just thinking, I've been thinking almost non-stop since these people asked us to write or give them a markdown file. I've been like, is this the death of the PowerPoint? And what does that mean for consultants? Because you can't be all substance. You have, sorry, you have to be all substance. You can't be all that whole all mouth and no trousers, which some people often are, right? Like it has to have all of the information in there to be able to be interrogated, and it's basically like people are going to interact with your proposal, with your report. They're going to ask it questions, and any sort of gaps that you have are like they're going to be found out. So you have to be so much more detailed, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, because we obviously we program a lot of AI tools, right? And so we're giving it a lot of context in the back end for it to be a useful tool, whether it's for our own work or a client's work. And so we kind of know what that process looks like. If you want to build a GPT or an agent, what files do you put behind it? I don't think we've ever really truly interrogated the structure, even though we might have talked about it necessarily. We give it the stuff it needs,
Oh,
but I haven't
sure.
really thought about the structure of it.
Speak for yourself, mate. This is literally what I
Okay.
am doing at the moment. I have to create a GPT that supports, like I said, about 70 PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I needed all of the text files out of them. I've managed to whittle it down to 58. Some of them are repeats and not that useful. So I've got 58 files, which I then need to structure into the best way for an LLM to do it. So, I mean, do you want me to go into this? Is this a bit boring?
I don't know. I'm fascinated. Tell me.
Okay, this is just a live stream for us. Sorry,
Yeah,
listeners,
yeah, yeah.
if there are any. Um, so I've kind of got three levels. So underneath at the basis, you've got kind of your source materials. It has to be like prose. It has to be markdown. It has to be really, really clear. I spent quite a
Just
while.
pick you up, like, because I want to address the markdown bit, right? For those who don't know, what is markdown?
Um, it's just markdown. It's just like when you write. So like when you
Well,
see things and
for
it's
me,
got like.
that's it's website language, right? If you don't know what a H1, H2 is, or things like that, then you're not going to know what markdown is. I don't think, because that's
It's
I
when
think
you
feel like it's similar.
encode. It's when you encode your formatting into your document. So you have like bold, you have like bullet points, all of that is indicated by like, the hashes and the And I mean, I don't even know. It's just Markdown. Like, does that make sense? That's not a very good way of explaining it.
Markdown is just Markdown. It's a good answer. Like it works, but like
It's a plain text markup language used to format text. That's what
there
it
we
is.
go. There we go. Okay, thank you. So you're doing that.
Yeah, but so because I've got 58, I know I have a limit on the number of source files, so then I have to combine them in a way that makes it really understandable. So I've gone for each of my PowerPoints, I've been like, or my text files, I've been like, okay, so which of these map to these areas? These are going to be my file areas, and then I'm extracting the relevant data out of them. So combining sometimes up to 6 in one, because sometimes they will repeat each other a little bit. But it's like understanding the best way for a machine to read this, because it needs to be able to surface the relevant context and information. And then on top of the source layer, then I'm going to have like a kind of a FAQ type layer of the kind of things that are likely to come up. And then on top of that is your system prompt, your behavioral instructions. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. Don't make stuff up, for example.
So we're now writing documents that writing a document a person can understand and a machine can understand aren't necessarily too dissimilar.
Which comes back to machine readable data, right? Yeah. To be honest, good data should be machine readable and human readable, but like we've just decided that we're going to add random colors and things, and I mean, there's nothing wrong, like that can help sometimes, right? The machine doesn't need color.
Well, I'm going back to my conversation about the structured or unstructured data that sits behind Toby GPT, and there's primarily two sources, right? Every live stream that I have ever done, the transcript of what I've said on those live streams is detailed by transmission title, transmission date, transmission platform, other speakers, blah 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 blah. So, but even that little bit at the top is just like bold
Your
semicolon,
metadata.
bold semicolon. Well, it's the metadata, but I haven't structured it for the thing to understand that it's the metadata. I've done it so I can understand it. It is just bold open sans colon, then the thing. There's no. I haven't done any markdown on it. Is what I'm saying.
Well, it doesn't need to have markdown to understand it, right? AI can understand other things. It just makes it easier.
So okay, so that's fine. So I have done some, but then it's because obviously in that one file, then there's about 20, 30 live streams. So then they're just repeated one after the other. So I do wonder whether it should be able to make the distinction between the two, because it's the same repeatable header at the end of each one. And then actually the other thing that Toby GPT is built on is like an 80-page document where it's like the questions and answers. So that formatting. So I do myself a little disservice. It is structured data, but when if you use Notebook LM, for example, you're chucking all and sundry kind of things in there, like a YouTube video, a website link, a PDF, just copying and pasting some text, a transcript. That seems to be able to cope with all of that unstructured data. Okay, I wouldn't say really well anymore. Like now we've done it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the thing is the thing that you have to be aware of, the reason why we make things as easy as possible for it is because it reduces the risk of something not being caught, and it makes it more effective, right? So when you're using Notebook LM, you don't know what it hasn't shown you. You only know what it has shown you. It's probably not going to make stuff up, but you don't know what the gaps are, particularly if they're like kind of nuanced gaps rather than really like obvious gaps. Like that's the thing with AI, it kind of flattens stuff, right? So I think that they're really good for understanding like at a basic level, but if you want to have confidence in it, then giving it in a way that's going to make it more understandable, better structure, is just the way to go.
So you're almost learning not new language, but a new way of doing. Like you've got to be able to speak to two different. Which I'll be honest, the failings of most workplace communication and collaboration is because an individual hasn't been able to flex their approach and their style to various different types of people in the organization, which is where something like insights discovery comes in, because it's like, how can you adapt how you say and position things for different audiences and interact with different people? But there's never been any. We've always been able to kind of gloss over that. Like we've always managed to just push through that, because it's like a nice to have, maybe, or I'm a leader, I'm so arrogant, I don't need to change the way I'm doing, people need to change to me, whatever. We're not going down to leadership. But now genuinely you have to be able to communicate in a different way to this employee you have called AI. Because if you don't, then you won't get the best out of them. But
Yeah,
we're
and
more
I
willing
mean,
to do that with an AI than we are a person.
well, well, well,
So that is a very long topic. I'm not expecting you to
yeah,
unpick that.
well, the reason why I'm doing all of this is I'm making a basically a knowledge tool slash coach to support people when they're starting, right, on their onboarding. And so it is all human centered. It needs to surface the correct information because it needs to be able to help the people on their first 90 days or beyond, but like that's the primary goal for now. And I would argue there's quite a lot of gaps in the 70 PowerPoints that I've had. So I just know that I've got that fund coming as well, because they haven't been structured in a very person-centric way. They've been structured in a, this is our onboarding program and you will sit through it and this is what you have, right? So they've not tailored it. Whereas I want an individual to be able to go and have a conversation with an AI to be able to really understand, actually, what does this mean for me? This is my context. How do I use these things? So yeah, I think it has the personalization element, I think, is where it has the chance to be transformative.
And HR and L&D has never really bottomed out the personalization element. It's always produced one piece of content for everyone, one thing for all employees. In particular in large organizations, that just simply doesn't work. So yeah, transformative. It allows you. I mean, we know this now. It's like it's going to enable human-centered design at scale, in the likes of which has never been truly done before. Which is nice because that just makes the world of work better. So there you go. The transformative moment is AI is going to solve all the problems with the world of work. Fantastic.
Okay, we don't actually think that. Next week, here's all the terrible things
next
about
week,
AI.
yeah. No, but all serious. Next week we've got Maria James joining us, who's going to talk about the donut principle. And I'm just going to leave it at that because Maria, we will interview and talk to Maria and talk about what the donut principle is. Because I spent a couple of hours on a call with her a couple of weeks ago, and just the journey and story about what the donut principle is and how it affects leadership of other people is really interesting. So we're really looking forward to Maria joining us next week. But for now, we've got lots of work to do before we get to go outside and enjoy the sunshine. So we are going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you all next week. Catch you later.